So the topics we'll be covering today are IT-related courses, career outcomes, ICT occupation, average salary, skill assessment authorities, fees and requirements, state-wise nomination criteria as well. Let's start with Diploma of IT and its related courses. The most famous diploma of IT at the moment is Advanced Diploma in Telecommunication and Network Engineering. It is provided by many different colleges and they are very flexible with the fees and with the assignments and examinations as well. So number one is Harvard International College, Danford College, Victorian Institute of Technology, Australian Engineering College, Canberra Institute, and the duration varies from 78 weeks to 2 years, that is 104 weeks, and fees also varies from $16,000 to $22,000. Moving on to next IT courses, Bachelor's of IT and its related courses, Bachelor of Information Technology, which includes Cybersecurity major, Information System major, Software Development major, Big Data and Analytics, Cloud and Enterprise Computing, Bachelor of Computer Science Gaming Program, Bachelor of Software Engineering Honors, Bachelor of Computing, Bachelor of Business Analytics. All these courses also provide a very good career and a PR pathway. It also includes Bachelors of Information Intelligence, Bachelors of Games Design and Development, Bachelor of Network and Security, Bachelor of Data Analytics, Bachelor of Business, which includes Analytics and Analysis. It is provided by many different, almost all the universities and many private institutes as well. So the most famous ones are Kaplan Business School, Torrance University, Victorian Institute of Technology, Holmes Institute, La Trobe University, Swinburne University, Edith Cowan University, Curtin University, so on, Monash University. So there are many different providers for this one. The course is for 3 years and the fees varies from $50,000 to $150,000. Moving on to the big course, which is Masters of IT. It includes Information Technology, Cybersecurity, Information Systems, Software Engineering, Business of Information System, Master of Computing, Master of Science, Master of Commerce, Master of Business Analysis, Master of Artificial Intelligence, Master of Networking, Data Science, and Master of Information and Communication Technology. The providers for these ones are Kaplan Business School, Monash University, Victorian Institute of Technology, Holmes Institute, La Trobe University, Swinburne University, Griffith University, Melbourne Institute of Technology. The course is for 2 years and the fees varies from $30,000 to $150,000. Now we're going to talk about ITC occupation. I would like Mr. Kunal Verma to speak something about it.
Hello, everyone. I hope I am audible if you guys can hear me. So my name is Kunal Verma and I'm a registered migration agent, OMARA-1803861. And I welcome everyone who is a part of the session and would like to encourage you guys to ask your friends who are basically from the same field, information technology, who have come to Australia or who are planning to come to Australia to study or would like to understand the PR options, what courses they should be doing, how would possibly that lead to permanent residency in future, what are the steps they have to take in order to start from study up till getting their permanent residency. We will be covering it all. So if you would ask your friends, your family members to be a part of the session, that will help them to also understand it. Thanks, Sukhmani, for introducing me. So yes, we will be covering about the important occupations now, ICT, Information and Communication Technology, or Information Technology, being the backbone of any economy. And Australia over the last so many years have been, growing on the technology side, along, competing with the other countries. And that's why it is very important for every country, as much for Australia as well, that they are capitalizing on this skill and getting as many skilled people into the country from the IT background. So Australian migration basically on the skills front works on 3 different skills lists. One is the medium to long-term skills list, the list which are important and are required by the federal or across Australia. Then there is a short-term skilled occupation list, which covers up the skills which are specific to states. The demands of those occupations are specific to each state, and so is the criteria which is decided by each state while they laid out the requirements for permanent residency through the skill pathway. And then there is the regional occupation list, the occupations which are of importance in the regional areas in Australia. So with ICT occupations, the ones which are popular in the short-term skill occupation list, they are ICT support and test engineer, web developer, systems test engineer, project manager, software tester, and administrator profiles, which is through web and network, and ICT trainer. Now, these occupations are in great demand, but they are specific to states. So certain states might have a higher demand, other states might have a lesser demand, but the demand is across most of the states in ICT. As I said, IT is the backbone for every country, and so much is for Australia as well. Now, with most popular IT courses, there are certain requirements, and then that's what we are trying to explain, that these occupations lead to what sort of IT profiles and what sort of earnings you can make if you would come across or if once you finish up those studies and then you get yourself into the profiles of, let's say, ICT support and test engineer. Again, in terms of what they do, ICT support and test engineers develop procedures and strategy to support, create, maintain, and manage technical quality assurance processes and guidelines with system infrastructure and integrity of systems. These profiles are almost likely full-time positions or contractual positions wherein you work for bigger organizations. And the average salary for these ICT support and test engineers ranges from 70 to 85,000. Now, pretty much while we're talking about this must be the starting point for most of you when you're starting your career as ICT support and test engineer. The next profile of a web developer, it's again one of the high demanded occupations in Australia. They are required across several businesses and organizations with the way we are getting towards the reliance on the websites and the applications through web. So salaries on these profiles are also on a higher end compared to the income threshold, which is in Australia now, which is much talked about, from 53,900 has gone up to 70,000 from the 1st of July. But again, for these profiles, as a web developer, you're still looking at making a salary of around 85,000 to 105,000. Can we move on to the next slide? Yeah, thank you. So ICT system test engineer, again, one of the demanded occupations in Australia. It says 88% of people employed as system test engineer, they work full-time, and the work they do is develop procedures, strategies to improve support system infrastructure, investigate, analyze, and resolve system problems, and performs issues, and test behavior, functionality, and integrity of systems. Now, while we're talking about the profile of what the work does, we try and refer to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, which has laid down these set, job duties, what a profile does. Quite a few times we come across clients who are really not sure of what their profile aligns with, because their job duties are much generic in nature, or they really don't know how to align it with Australian Bureau of Statistics. And a lot of you would know that by the means of 𝐴NSCO. So if that's the reference point basically is when you are looking at any position or the work which you are doing and you want to relate it to the position which is on the skill migration list. For that, you need to refer to 𝐴NSCO, the Australian Bureau of Statistics, which laid down the key duties or the duties which are related to a profile of any occupation. So that's just not related to IT, but this is standard across all the occupations which are on the occupation list on the skill migration. You'll have to refer with the 𝐴NSCO in order to understand what is the set duty or the key duty or the duties which align to the profile. The annual salary again for ICT system test engineer ranges from 80,000 to Okay. Now, again, this is on a higher end itself. As I said, IT professionals are just not in demand. So as they're in demand, the income which they make in Australia are also above a lot of other occupations. So again, if you love money, if you basically if you are tech savvy, then pretty much this is a skill which can get you both money as well as can always keep the excitement going with your work. Next is ICT project manager. Project managers plan, organize, direct, control, and coordinate quality accredited ICT projects. So you're managing the project entirely from the ICT perspective. Uh, the demand of these profiles are again very strong. I'm sure if any of you has been working in the position, or if anyone you who is studying the course, you would have been seeing a lot of jobs coming out for this position as well. If you would look at this average salary, which is also mentioned, that is all on the higher side itself, which is 125K to 145K, which is the salary, which is an average salary for this profile. So again, money wise and demand wise, they both are exactly aligning pretty well. Software tester. So the ones who basically are on the testing front, while they don't do the development, but they are more into towards testing. They are the ones who fits into the role of a software tester. They professionally trained software testers are in great demand. The growth in the testing domain is tremendous. The people coming from this skill background, because a lot of applicants we apply for do have a background from IT itself, from overseas while they have done their bachelor's, and a lot of people really work in development or in testing itself. So there is a great demand of testers in Australia as well, and the future obviously is bright on this front as well for migration as well as for getting a job in the field. The average annual salary for a tester job in Australia ranges from 100,000 to 120,000. The web administrator profile, which is related to design, building, maintaining websites, and provide web technology solutions and services. The main task is to design and maintain websites. The average annual salary for these occupations ranges from 85 to 105. Now, Neil, there has been a lot of change in terms of the income levels over the last couple of years. You must have seen. So prior to COVID, there was certain income level. The demand of positions have gone up during the time of COVID, and the income levels have gone up for a lot of these positions as well. So pretty much, the income levels keep changing from time to time. However, while we are defining here, we're talking about the average income. So pretty much, if you have spent a certain amount of time in a position, that's when you might can earn much more. But there has to be a reference point for these positions, because that's what, as I said, IT is all about. You're doing something which is reducing the time of an individual. You're basically working towards building a technology which is going to benefit a lot of people. So that's why these jobs are high-paid jobs. Now, in order to proceed, or I would say one of the prerequisites after you finish your studies in Australia or overseas, you are looking at obtaining a skill assessment. Now, that's one of the requirements for pursuing or for initiating the process of skilled migration. The authority which does the assessment, I don't know if I'm actually into a quiet room. I'll probably try and speak a bit louder just so that if you can hear me better. So the skill assessment authority, which is for this IT, these IT occupations, is through Australian Computer Society, which is what also known as ACS. They do the assessment for majorly all the IT occupations which gets assessed in Australia. Other than lately, we have started seeing that offshore candidates who are able to also get their assessment through Engineers Australia if they have studied an IT qualification. But primarily, most of the occupations which are from ICT background they get assessed through Australian Computer Society. And there are different pathways depending on where have you completed the qualification, what all have you completed, and those are the pathways which we will be talking about today. So the first pathway, which is a post-Australian study pathway is basically, as it says by the name, post-Australian study. So once you've completed an Australian qualification, after which you are able to go through this pathway to be able to apply for your skill assessment. Now, you must have completed an Australian bachelor's degree or a higher, which has a major in ICT, and that has to be closely related to your nominated occupation. Now, when you would study any qualification in Australia, the way they have designed the structure of most of the qualifications, it does have a major. So whenever you, and that's primarily the case in masters itself. We do have come across a lot of clients who do bachelors, wherein they have done bachelors in information technology. Now, with that bachelor's, they do not choose any specialization or a major, and they basically have an opportunity of picking up their majors by deciding on what they want to pursue further in their career. So it is not important, or I would say primitive to the fact that you have completed your bachelor's, which is with subjects which has for business analysis, software testing, software development, security specialist. So what would you do after that would also be one of the factors which would define on that. But yes, with majors, with masters, it's always that you would pick up a major there, and that would become the basis for you to apply. So you can have more than one major because it is on the number of subjects you would study as a part of your study. That would decide which occupation would you apply for your permanent residency in. So after you finish an Australian bachelor's or master's, uh, you also need to have 1 year of relevant work experience after the completion of the relevant Australian degree. So after you finish up your Australian qualification, you're required to work for 1 year in Australia, and that would be to complete the experience in the relevant field. And that would basically form the basis for you to get a skill assessment. Or if you do not see you're able to secure a job for yourself after completing an Australian qualification with a major in IT, you can also complete a professionally ACS professionally a program that would also make you eligible to apply for your skill assessment by using this pathway one, which is the post-Australian study. Now, the pathway two, which is the skill assessment process. Now, that's majorly for applicants who do not firstly have either an Australian qualification or the ones who primarily have applied or looking to apply for their permanent residency from overseas. Now, not that if you're only studying in Australia, then only you are able to get a skill assessment. You can also get yourself a skill assessment if you have studied a qualification from overseas, which may or may not be in ICT. But at the same time, as an overseas applicant, if you're looking to apply for skill assessment, you do not have an option of completing a professional year program. All you would have to look into is having experience to combine along with your qualification if you want to apply for the skill assessment. So the AQF comparable, which is the Australian qualification framework comparable qualification, that's where we talk about bachelor's or higher. And then we have mentioned about the studies which are at a lower level and what do you need in addition to get an assessment. So if your ICT content, for a closely related to your nominated occupation. So example, say if you've done a bachelor's in information technology from overseas, and the ICT content of that qualification, or it's an ICT major qualification, and you also have got subjects which are pertaining to the majors you have picked up, which is say software engineering or a business analysis, then all you need to have is 2 years of relevant work experience in the past 10 years. So anyone who is looking to apply for an assessment with a relevant IT qualification, having subjects which are of the same domain, they are only required to demonstrate 2 years of experience in the last 10 years, or they can have 4 years of experience anytime in the past in order to meet the criteria for applying for the assessment. The ICT, I'm still yet to cover the next page. Yeah, so ICT major, wherein the content, so let's say I've done an ICT qualification, which is a 4-year study or a 3-year study. However, I did not have enough subjects which basically were relevant to the experience I've gained. So my qualification basically was covering more of business analysis subjects or the software engineering subjects. whereas the job I have done was for a security specialist. Now, in that case, the minimum experience I would need to have is for 4 years. So the ICT content in my study is there, but it is not relevant to the experience I have gained. Then I need to obviously show for 4 years. Then, as if my ICT content is going to get reduced, that I have not, let's say, study an ICT qualification or IT qualification, but I still have a few subjects in my studies for 3 years or 4 years, I would need to have 6 years of experience, which would basically be required in any of these specializations or the majors I would be applying my assessment in to be able to secure an assessment. And let's say if I'm studying ICT major diploma, advanced diploma, or an associate degree, then I would need 5 years of experience in the last 10 years. So with a diploma level qualification, 5 years is the minimum requirement I have. And you can also study anything which is less than, or there is no relevant qualification, then RPL basically is the process, which is what we're going to talk about now. So anywhere, if you have studied a qualification which is non-ICT, so you have studied anything which is other than ICT, you're required to show 6 years of relevant ICT experience completed anytime in the past with a successful RPL application, which is you need to submit 2 projects along with your application, which should be done within the last 5 years, one in the last 2 years, one in the last 5 years, and those projects has to relate strongly or highly towards the skill you are applying for. And again, if you do not have any education, you can still apply. You would need 8 years of relevant experience, and that is completed anytime in the past with the 2 projects which you have completed related to your occupation. Right. So there are plenty of ICT occupations which are available on the medium to long-term skills list. Again, when I say medium and long-term strategic skills list means the ones which are in great demand, which are in higher demand. And I mean, to name, I have not obviously mentioned a few, but these are all the ones which are available: software engineering, programming, network engineer, analyst programmer, ICT business analyst, system analyst, multimedia specialist, which has lately been, it was introduced it's just been there for the last 4 years. Security specialist, again, one of the demanded occupations, which has been added lately. So these are all the occupations which are in great demand or which are in higher demand, and it's available for all the visa subclasses when we look at skilled migration. Now we're talking about the general skill visa options, which one has. Again, this does cover general skill as well as the other options for the employer-sponsored applicants. So 189 skilled independent visa, 190, which is the state nomination visa, 491, which is the provisional visa, which leads to a permanent residency option, which is subclass 191. That's also one of the options for skilled migration. So you've got occupations which are on the medium to long-term list. That makes you eligible to apply for all these subclasses, which is 189, 190, and 491. Now, with the employer-sponsored visas, you would see 482, 186, 494. These are all the 3 visas which you can also apply for if you have any of these occupations or you've got experience, as well as or skill assessment, or you meet the eligibility requirements to be able to apply any of these subclasses as well. Right. Now, this is an important change, which is what we would be seeing from the 1st of July 2023. There are certain occupations which have been identified from the ICT background, which will be eligible for a 485 visa extension. So what the Department of Education and the Immigration Department has done, they have looked at the demanded occupations or the demanded skills which they need over the next few years to recover from the COVID impact, or to basically get things back on track, and to see that there will not be any skill shortage across these fields. And if you read through it, there are quite a few occupations, or there are quite a few positions which are available, which would entitle anyone who is holding a 485 visa as of 1st of July 2023, or who would be applying for a 485 visa in the post-study work stream after successfully completing a bachelor's or a master's qualification or a PhD or a research, they all will be entitled for extended 485 visas. So let's say a standard duration to apply for a 485 visa is for a bachelor's qualification is 2 years. They would get an additional 2 years, which is 4 years of TR. The ones who have done a master's, they would get additional 1 year. The ones who have got research, they would get additional 1 year. So everybody's going to get additional couple of years of temporary visa, apart from their standard, temporary graduate visa, which they would anyways be getting. Now, these are the few qualifications which have basically came out of those occupations which are on the ANSCO. And if you look at from ICT front, I believe it is covering anything and everything. So Bachelor's of Information Technology, Bachelor's of Computer Science, Information Systems, Cybersecurity, Business Analytics, Advanced Computing, Information Technology and Systems, Software Engineering, Data Science. So these are primarily a lot of bachelor's level qualifications which are a part of it. There was an instrument which was also introduced confirming on what process the applicants need to follow, those who are holding a 485 visa, to the ones who would apply after the 1st of July. And there will be more details on this after the 1st of July for anyone who is looking to apply or those who would be eligible to get this extension. But while we are discussing, while I'm talking about these qualifications, the idea is for you to get an idea that if you are holding a 485 visa, which is expiring on or after 1st of July 2023, and you have started any of these qualifications, you may be eligible to get additional temporary graduate visa. And you wouldn't really need to worry about applying for another visa if you are looking at applying for another visa, which is obviously if a PR, then yes, it's what you're here for. But if you're looking to apply for any temporary visa after this, you may not even have the need of applying any temporary visa just because you might have additional 2 years of TR added to you. For master's side, you would see again Masters of Information Technology, Data Science, Information Systems, Computer Science, Computing, Cybersecurity, Networking, Cybersecurity. Then again, Masters of Enterprise Resource Planning. So they're all there actually after the confirmation which has come from the Department of Education. But again, of what all these qualifications would lead to the requirement that is something which is what we would get to know on the 1st of July, that yes, these are the listed qualifications. But while they're covering most, what they were trying to identify was it does cover every qualification which is leading to the occupations which are on the ANSCO. All right. Great. So now we are discussing on the state nomination criteria for the states in Australia and the territories, just for everyone to get an idea of how do they need to pursue the pathway for state nomination. Well, with 189, again, it's a process which requires you to have a skill assessment, which is what we have discussed. The second is obviously having enough points, which is 65 as of date, if you need to apply the minimum points. Again, Australian migration system is very competitive, so you definitely need to have higher points in order to secure an invitation when you come from a domain like information technology, because language is one thing which is absolutely important for any IT applicant, because that's what you would be dealing mostly with. Your work is not related to a skill when you are doing anything hand job or a job which is requiring you to do physical work, but it would more be a work that would require you to communicate over emails or work on different softwares. So that's where the points requirement is one of the key for a lot of IT applicants, because the competition across this field or this ICT sector is absolutely the most over these years. So starting with the state nomination for Tasmania, that's what we will talk about first. Now, Tasmania being a smaller state, the number of seats which they have got over the past few years been great, because there was always this myth of people who have left the bigger states while they could secure the permanent residency in regional states through the easier pathway. However, over the last year, everybody has realized that Victoria has been one of the states which has given away a lot of applicants their invitation for state nomination. But as compared to the size of Tasmania, I believe they have been able to secure a lot of skilled migrants because a lot of people have gone. Their education system has become very prominent over the last few years in Tasmania. Now, while we talk about the exact pathway, we will start with the skill employment pathway first. So, in order to apply for, we can go to the previous slide itself. Thank you. Yeah. So, with the skill employment pathway, you must have been working in Tasmania for the past 6 months. Immediately when you're making an application, you must be currently living in Tasmania and intend to continue living there. Now, most of the states we would talk about, you would understand that they are really keen to retain the skilled applicants there rather than just giving away them a pathway to apply and then move to other state. So when we talk about state nomination, we obviously look at there are two types of applications you could do. One from by living in the state, and the second when you're offshore, which has also just opened last year, or I would say this financial year. So you must be living in Tasmania and intend to continue living there. Your employment must be in the occupation listed on the Tasmanian's onshore skilled or employment occupation list. So they have separate list for every process or the pathway they would they have got on their migration program or the state nomination program. So you have to have an employment which is in that occupation, which is on the Tasmanian onshore skill employment list. Your employment needs to be closely related to your nominated occupation, a skilled role within the same industry as your skill assessment, and there is additional information about that. There must be a genuine ongoing need for your position within the business, including a minimum of 12 months contract with at least 3 months remaining. So when you're making an application, you must have that application, or when you're making an application, you must provide them a contract, must be working in an occupation closely related to your occupation, to your skill, in which you have a skill assessment. So they have made this application process a bit more, a complex, or I would say a bit more with additional requirements, so everyone could possibly meet, and they're just not giving away to anyone who is just meeting the least of the requirements. So since the requirement is only for somebody to work there for 6 months, eventually they want it to be in the relevant field. They wanted the business should have a genuine need, and for which for all of this you need to provide supporting documents when you're putting an application. Next, please. Right. Now, the next would be the Tasmanian Skilled Graduate Pathway. If you must have completed a course of study and obtained a letter of completion from a tertiary institution in Tasmania, that is, you are doing a course which is a 𝐸𝐴-registered course there. You must have lived in the state for at least 2 calendar years from the commencement of your course and for the duration of your study. So as a skilled graduate pathway, you have to complete study which is completed while you have lived in Tasmania, as well as from a provider wherein the course you would be studying there would be a 𝐸𝐴-registered course. The minimum level of study which one would complete would be either a diploma or a higher, or at least a certificate 3, which is with the 𝐴𝐧𝐿 major group 3 or 4, and listed in try course for a duration of 92 weeks. So what it means is if you are applying based on the Tasmanian skilled graduate pathway, you are required to demonstrate a study which is at least a diploma level or higher, or if it's the least of the qualifications, should be a certificate 3, which should have a relevance to a skill which is on the 𝐴𝐴𝐴 group 3 or group 4. So wherein a certain level of skill is still going to be demonstrated while you are pursuing a study. It should not be something which is anything level below than that. Your course must have been completed full-time and on-site in Tasmania. And you must be currently living in Tasmania, intending to live further as well. Now, again, we are emphasizing on the point, states are, especially smaller states, which has limited number of seats, are very, very particular about the people they are nominating. So you are required to ensure that you are living there and studying there, and you're not trying to obviously bypass any process or try to circumvent processes wherein you are trying to show that you're living there, because they do ask for a complex set of documents in order to prove that, and they do thorough checks to make sure that you have lived there. And that's very, very important. So while you're studying there, it is very important for you to be living in the state and then meet the requirements. Okay, now the third option for Tasmanian state nomination would be the established resident pathway. So you must have been living in Tasmania for the last 3 years with not more than 50% of your total Australian residence spent in any other state. Again, this is what has been another pathway which got added by a lot of states. Again, I believe if you understand where it comes from, states to understand that people are really not interested or intending to live in smaller regional states, because everybody wants to move to bigger states like Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland. But at the same time, these states have got people who've come to study there. Eventually, they realize they're not getting permanent residency. So they've come up with options for applicants who have established their pathway or residency there as well. And that's what has become the basis for them even now to apply for state nomination. So must be living for the past 3 years, and you must have not lived in any other state for more than 50% of your total stay. You must be currently employed in Tasmania in a role equivalent to ANSCO skill level 1, 2, 3, including a cumulative of 12 or 24 months. So your job has to be at a certain skill level while you're working in Tasmania. All right. Currently be employed in Tasmania, including a minimum of 18 months in the last 3 years in the role equivalent to ANSCO 4 or 5. So if it is that you're able to demonstrate a job which is at skill level 1, 2, or 3, then you are able to secure, you're able to show it by just working for 12 months. However, if your job is at a lower skill level, then you really have to show at least 18 months in the last 3 years that you worked. Or the option is that if you operated a business for at least 2 years with a taxable income of at least 53,900. So that's what you have to show by means of your notice of assessment, and you have run a business for the last 2 years with this much minimum income. Now, there are priority attributes across all the streams in Tasmania. So, they have shown it by different colors: amber, orange, green, and that is where you are able to see while you would run through your application with us that, okay, where do you sit? And that would become the strength or the how strong your application is when you're putting through the Tasmania state. Okay, all right, next please. So the next state we're going to talk about is Northern Territory. Again, we've started with the smaller states or the regional states itself or the territories itself, just for everyone to get an idea that these, these states do have pathways which are promising. Only if you are able to spend some time out in these states and meeting the requirements, you're able to apply. So the eligibility criteria for the NT graduates, the ones who have completed a qualification in Northern Territory. International graduates who have started in NT will be eligible for 190 if you meet the following: completed one or more qualification after studying in NT at an NT-based institution for 2 years, either in a single course or a set of nested courses, and you have lived in NT for a period of at least 6 continuous months immediately after the date of completion of your last qualification. So the way it works is you've gone to Northern Territory to finish a qualification, finish your studies for 2 years, subsequently have been able to get a graduate visa, the 485 visa, and you've been staying there for at least 6 months before you're putting an application. After the completion date of your qualification, and you're applying for that while holding a 485 visa. The time spent on a bridging visa associated with 4.8 life can be counted in for the 6 months period. So again, there was a time when 4.85 was taking 6 months, 12 months to be granted. So they have taken that into consideration as well. So after you finish your studies, applied for your 4.85 while there itself, and you've been there for the past 6 months, even while holding a bridging visa, you can still be considered. and you have demonstrated genuine and sustained efforts to obtain employment from an NT employer in your nominated or a close-related occupation. Now, obviously, this effort is how they will understand whether do you really have an intention of settling down there, or is just that you want to get the state nomination? Because obviously, if I would get a job in a state, I would continue living there as well. Okay, so that's where you have to demonstrate the efforts as well. There are several means or the ways you can do it, and you show their efforts. So international graduates who are unable to live in NT for 6 months after completing 2 years of study in the NT will only be considered for a subclass 491. And you must provide evidence of making genuine effort. Again, the same thing, which is that you have to show that you have tried looking for a job. But if you are unable to live for 6 months and then applying, they would not consider you for 190, which is a straight permanent residency state nomination, but a 491. Excuse me. Other territory residents. So the NT resident applicant, those who are on temporary visas with work rights and they are currently residing in Northern Territory, they will be eligible for a subclass 190 nomination if they are able to demonstrate that they have been residing in NT for at least 2 consecutive years immediately. So it's for the ones, let's say, who have got a 485 visa and they have moved to Northern Territory and they have been living there for the past 2 years. Demonstrate that they do not have any family member who is living in any other state. Demonstrate full-time employment in Northern Territory in an eligible occupation continuously for at least 2 years immediately prior to applying for NT nomination. And then that job is also available for the 12 months. So while you have been living there for 2 years, you also have to demonstrate that you're working in an eligible occupation. So the ones who would be able to demonstrate all this can be considered for, or maybe considered for a 190 nomination. The other ones which are, looking at applying for a 491, or if they believe they want to meet the requirements for a 491, then they have to meet the following requirements. So they are the ones who have started living in the NT prior to 1st July 2020, demonstrate that they have resided in NT for at least 6 months continuously, or consecutive months immediately prior to the application. Demonstrate that, again, none of the family members living in another state, full-time employment for 6 months prior to applying nomination, and a further 12 months job is still available. So the difference is 2 years. They are able to, the ones who have been living there for 2 years working can look at 190, and the ones who are obviously living and working for the past 6 months, they will only get considered for a 491. All right. So who started living in NT after 1st of July, they have to demonstrate at least 12 months of residency, job, and obviously able to demonstrate that they are able to have the job for the next 12 months. So they are looking at, so the difference between the ones who have started living prior to 1st July to the ones who have started living after 1st July 2020 is the duration of stay for a 491. Otherwise, in terms of full-time employment, remains for 6 months itself. The job requirement for future availability should be there for 12 months. And the employment must also meet the following additional requirements. They are required to, the business in which they are applying should be there for the past 12 months. Positions that are based at service office spaces, hot desk arrangements will generally not be considered. So they are looking at people working in the skill itself. See, the key point while we are trying to talk all this is the states are working on the principle of skilled migration. The reason they want to nominate you because they believe you possess a skill which is in higher demand for their state, and that's why they're trying to nominate you. And obviously, if you're getting paid even a salary which is lesser than what the market salary rate is, they may not even consider that. And the other option, which is residing there for 12 months, full-time employment, if you have got for 6 months prior to the NT nomination, demonstrate that employment is available for at least further 12 months. Again, I believe is the same part for the 491, which we have covered already. So I think that's pretty much it for the 491 for based on the residency for other NT residents. Now, offshore applicants, again, we've got a lot of invitations from Northern Territory lately from offshore. And that's where the state is particular about only nominating applicants for a subclass 491. they're required to meet a minimum the minimum requirements which are specified below, that you must have post-qualification work experience of at least 1 year in your nominal occupation in the last 10 years. And a genuine commitment is required towards working and living in Northern Territory. And you do have an evidence of financial capacity. So they're really not asking much for anyone who is looking at applying for Northern Territory state nomination from offshore. Pretty much 1 year of experience, a lot of applicants have. So that's where it's not very hard for somebody who wishes to secure an NT nomination. Primarily, they would come down and they should have an intention of settling down there, for which you have to provide your submissions, which should be in support of that you want to live in Northern Territory and establish your career there itself. I think they've got other two options as well for the nomination. One is the family stream. If you've got a family there, and there are certain relationships which can entitle you for a 491 there as well. And then the job offer, if you would find a job offer there, that is another option which you could possibly work towards if you're looking at applying for the Northern Territory state nomination. Western Australia. Western Australia, again, has become important and popular over the last 3 to 4 years. Prior to that, the WA state was not really keen on inviting a lot of applicants. But over the last 3 years, we have seen a great spike in the numbers of nomination from WA state. Again, they have requested for additional seats. This is what a WA state, we like about that is we like about the way they operate, is that they always are keen on pushing more private migration over the last couple of years and have been going back to the immigration or the Department of Home Affairs asking for more seats. So they want to basically have more, seats than what gets allocated to them at the beginning of the year. Now, they do have 331 eligible occupations across the 3 streams they nominate with. They don't have no application fee. So if you're looking at applying for the nomination for WA, you don't have to pay a fees to them. Employment contracts and work experience requirements have been removed lately now across all the 3 streams. So what are the main eligibility requirements? If you would like to be considered for a state nomination criteria, you should either be fitting in the general stream, wherein a pathway wherein you have certain occupations listed on the general stream and you need to meet the requirements for it. Or you really need to meet a requirement by means of graduate stream, wherein you must be a graduate, which says that you would have finished qualifications by studying wet or higher secondary courses of the occupations or the occupation qualifications which are listed on the graduate occupation list. So that's the overview for all the applicants who are looking to apply for WA nomination, be it a state nomination subclass 190 or a regional nominated visa subclass 491. All the applicants through the general stream, which is Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. The difference between is obviously the set of requirements which you need to meet if your qualification or if your occupation is in the Schedule 1 to the ones occupations which are on the Schedule 2. So yes, every applicant across the 3 streams required to meet the Home Affairs requirement, which is the minimum skill. You have to have a skill assessment. You have to have minimum points to be able to apply. Your occupation must be available on the relevant list. So not that if your occupation is on the graduate list, you're able to apply for Schedule 1 and otherwise. Meet the minimum English requirement, which has been laid for against every occupation or against every stream. Now, at least 1 year of experience, again, which is what they are talking about, they have removed. But again, this used to be the requirements wherein you need to have 1 year of experience in your nominated occupation if you're looking at applying for the Schedule 1 occupations. There was a requirement for both Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 for occupations to demonstrate you have a full-time employment contract in WA for a minimum of 6 months in the nominated occupation. So that was obviously required not for graduates, but only for the ones who are applying for, occupation in general scheme of Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. Now, this is what has been removed lately as well for this year. Now, for graduates, anyone who have obtained a Certificate 3 level or above qualification from accredited WA institution, they are able to meet the requirement for the graduate work stream. And obviously, they need to meet the minimum of 2 years of WA study requirement to be able to apply. So this is just the overview of all the three pathways WA state has. And really, while by removing the requirement of job offer, they've actually relaxed everything what needs. So if you're living there and if you've started there, I think that's what it needs for you to be able to fulfill any of this streams. South Australia, again, a very promising state. Over these years, one of the states wherein a lot of applicants have migrated from bigger states and have been successfully able to settle down there as well. So South Australia has obviously got some standard requirements wherein you have to check if you're applying under the graduate work stream, then you must have got your occupation, which is on the, if your occupation must be eligible for the pathway to be able to apply from the graduate. But again, South Australia is one state, if I must tell you, that they have got quite a few occupations covered on their list. Obviously, you have to be applying as a graduate. You must be living in, studying there. You must have been working as well after, if your occupation requires you to be working after you finish studies there. Again, few of the standard requirements which are listed here as well, having a skill assessment, minimum points, completing your qualification through the South Australian provider, and have undertaken your skilled work experience post-work completion. So they don't really accept if your occupation require in South Australia you to have experience of 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, whatever the requirements are. You have to meet that post-completion of your studies in South Australia, and then you are eligible to apply for the pathway, the state nomination by means of a South Australian graduate pathway. Working in South Australia, a lot of clients have been really keen to consider this as a pathway while things have not been working out for them in the bigger states, because they were able to secure jobs in South Australia, or they were able to find the pathways to be easier compared to other states. As I said in the beginning as well, that South Australia is one state which has been very promising. If a lot of people who have moved there in South Australia, they've been able to secure the nomination as if they have met the requirements, the possibility of them to get nominated is very high. So to be eligible under the working in South Australia stream, you must check if your occupation is eligible under the working in South Australia stream. So every occupation, against every occupation, they list out the pathways that are available. Living and working in South Australia, be under the 45 years of age, which is the age for the skilled migration. Have a valid and a positive skill assessment in your occupation. Have at least competent English. Score at least 65 points. Now, points 7, 8, 9, and 10 are important for this. Be currently working in a job that is related to your nominated occupation. So again, if you're looking to apply for state nomination in South Australia, you must be working in your nominated occupation in which you have a skill assessment. This is defined again by the 𝐴NSCO. Again, so if anyone who's coming from the IT background, and if they're looking to apply for a state nomination there, in most of the occupations for work, the requirement is from 12 to 24 months. So that's what you have to work in order to secure a state nomination there. You have undertaken your skilled work experience post the course completion. Again, so if you're working while you're studying, they won't count that towards meeting the state nomination criteria. Meet the minimum work experience requirement listed for your occupation on the skill occupation list. So again, as mentioned, that the experience requirements varies. It can be 6 months, 12 months to 24 months. And for most of the occupations I've seen, for the ones who are looking to apply through this pathway, it's 12 to 24 months. Be working for at least 20 hours per week or 40 per fortnight, unless specified higher in your occupation. So if you're looking to apply, you must, again, for skill migration, 20 hours is considered to be full-time hours. If you're looking to claim for the points test. So that's where if you're even looking at meeting the state nomination criteria, they're happy to accept your application, even if you work for 20 hours a week or 40 a fortnight, unless if your occupation specifically says that you have to work for higher number of hours. Another state which is offering a nomination for long-term residents, so people who have gone to South Australia, have been living there for quite some time, they are still able to get nominations there. So you need to check if your occupation again is in the list, other requirements being there. The important points which you need to keep in mind is that you are currently working for the past 6 months in South Australia in any skill level 1, 2, 3, or 4. If it's level 4 carer or aid occupation, um, you have at least 12 months total work experience in South Australia in again the same skill level over the past 3 years. And this is cumulative and inclusion of the 6 months requirement, which is what I've said above. So again, it has to be that 6 months when you're applying, and you must have got 12 months of experience in the same skill as well. So during these 12 months, you must have worked at least 20 hours. For 491 visa, they want at least you to be working 20 hours a week or 40 a fortnight. And for 190 subclass, you must be working for at least 30 a week or 60 per fortnight. Now, again, for 190, they also have other additional requirements that you must be working at higher skill levels, which is say skill level 1. Or if you are not working at skill level 1, then you must be receiving a higher salary, which is say 80,000 if you're working in outside of, which is in Greater Adelaide, and at least 65,000 if you're working in regional of South Australia. So while we're looking at applying for 190 as a long-term resident, obviously, other than meeting the requirements of working there for at least 12 months in the last 3 years, our work has to be at least at the skill level 1, or the income we should be making would be 80,000 at least, or 60 if you're working Greater Adelaide, or 65,000 if it's in regionals, South Australia. Now, outer region South Australia, a very, I would say, popular pathway which has come up lately since the last 1 year as well for among the residents there. Now, among the minimum requirements which are listed, that you have to have a skill assessment on the list. You have to, that's again, I'm repeating that you have to check whether your occupation is eligible for this pathway. So that's the very first thing if you're really looking at applying as an IT applicant, whether you're able to apply there, through this pathway or not. Age, skill assessment, and the key points of this are that if you're looking at applying for a 491 subclass by working in outer regional of South Australia, to obtain a 491, you must have been working for the past 6 months in any job. Now, that's the beauty. If you are living there and you're looking to apply for a 491, you can do any job, does not matter whether that is related or not related to your nominated occupation. You must be working, though, for at least 30 hours per week or 60 per fortnight. That's the key requirement which you need to focus on. So any job, but at least 30 hours, 6 months, and you meet other requirements, you can apply for a 491 there. For subclass 190, you must have again been working for the past 6 months. Does not matter the job is related or it's not related. 30 hours or per week or 60 a fortnight is same again as well as for the 491. You need to demonstrate though your work is at the skill level 1 or 2, and you're receiving a salary which is 65,000 or above. So that's again the requirement if you're looking at applying for a 190 by working for 6 months through the outer region South Australia pathway. And you need to get a letter. Again, those are the other additional requirements, that you need to get a letter from the employer who would justify why your position is important to them. The business must be operating for the past 12 months, and then they should not have anything adverse against the business while they are looking at giving you a letter in terms of support. Australian Capital Territory, ACT. Okay, so let's look at the requirements now. So Australian Capital Territory again has, you all must go through the different pathways while we talk about different states, because a lot of time I consult clients and they're really confused of where they need to go. They do consider talking about and understanding every state nomination criteria. So ACT obviously as a state, they have a requirement of, their own matrix system one needs to fulfill. But before that, we talk about what do they ask for 190 and 491. So in order to apply for a 190 subclass in ACT, you must be living in Canberra for 6 months and continue until your invitation. So You must have been living there for 6 months when you're putting an application. You worked a minimum of 30 hours per week, and your occupation must be on the ACT critical skills list. So these are the 3 key requirements for somebody who needs to apply. While for a 491, you must have been living in Canberra for the past 3 months, working for a minimum of 15 hours, 15 hours per week is the requirement, and your occupation should be on ACT critical skills list. So again, very basic requirements when they're asking for it. But again, they want to make sure that you're meeting all the requirements associated further. So to follow this pathway, you cannot have your dependents be living in any other except states, and that's very, very important. As I said, ACT is very, very particular about even the nomination itself. For ACT 491 nomination, you must have at least 1 year of relevant experience in your occupation, and for 190 nomination, you must have at least 3 years relevant experience in your occupation. So while we're talking this, only relevant to the ones who are applying from offshore. Um, um, so I repeat this pathway again. So for overseas applicants, you and your dependents cannot be in Australia. Okay. So there is no requirement. I mean, there is no way if you're applying as an offshore, you can be in Australia to apply for the state nomination. Because while you're getting yourself considered as offshore, then what it means is you cannot be in Australia when you're putting an application. But they only have a requirement of 1 year of experience or 3 years of experience, depending what you're looking to apply for, if it's 491 or 190. But again, so they have got certain numbers because obviously being a smaller, state or territory, they are not given as much seats as a bigger state. So they literally have a limitation to the number of occupations they invite from the IT background. So again, software and application programmers, less than 40. So that's basically not the number they do come across the whole program. But primarily every invitation round, they look at inviting these many number of people across the spread of occupations. And those who are high on the matrix score gets invitations the first, to the ones obviously who have a lower matrix scores. So again, the seats for software and application programmers are again a bit higher, which is for occupations analyst programmer, developer programmer, software engineer and tester. Network engineers, network administrator, obviously very less seats. So obviously you have to score higher in the matrix to be able to secure a position there. ICT managers obviously have got just less than 5 seats for every round when they conduct, when they look at the matrix scores. ICT project managers and ICT managers are the nominated occupations of that. For business and system analysts, again, less than 20. So while just look at these numbers, see what goes behind that is the number of jobs they would see available in their state, or the number of applicants they really are keen to nominate under these occupations, and they would really need these people to come, and work in ACT under the same occupation. Again, support test engineers less than 5, which covers the quality assurance engineer, support test engineers, then technicians, which are for hardware technician, customer support officer, web administration, and ICT support technicians are the other occupations, which are again, the number of invitations are much lesser. So less than 5 is what they really invite in every round. Right. Talking about one of the most, I would say, performing, or the states which has given the most number of invitations this year, which is Victoria. So again, the key program of Victoria for the last 3 years have been working on the principle of expression of interest, followed by registration of interest, followed by nomination, and then the visa application. So these are the stages one goes through while they're looking at applying for Victoria nomination. During COVID times, for 2 years, the program was only limited to invite occupations which are delivering or contributing to the health sectors. But over this year, the state has invited anyone and everyone across occupations which are on the medium to long-term, short-term skills list, and the ROL as well for 491. So to apply again, you have to have an expression of interest, then have a registration of interest. Competent English is the minimum requirement. Skills assessment and 65 points is what they look at as the basic requirements for the program. Obviously, while they're inviting applicants, they are selecting applicants based on the registration of interest, wherein you're required to fill your income. So while the skill program would also move towards inviting applicants based on their skill as well as the income which they are deriving in Australia, I believe the future would rather be having invitations of IT applicants becoming very competitive as well, because we do come across a lot of clients who are making much higher income, over 100,000 in most cases when they're working in IT. So that is where, if the skill migration program gets aligned with what Victoria has been doing over this year, uh, other than looking at point system, or if the point system really gets completely, if they completely abolish that point system and come up with something different, they may focus on the income levels of applicants along with the skill level of the skilled work they're doing while they're nominating the applicants. So for 491 subclass, again, the process works the same. You have to have an expression of interest, registration of interest, have skill assessment, competent English. After March this year, the state has also advised applicants that they can apply if they are living and working in Melbourne. They can still apply for a 491. They can still submit a registration of interest, but as soon as they would get nominated, they're required to move in regional, because 491 subclass requires you to be living in regional for 3 out of the 5 years visa before you could apply for the permanent residency. So all they want is the applicants, while they're applying for 491, they should be committed to live and work in regional. But the basis of invitation would remain the same, that if you are applying for state nomination, you must have got a registration of interest in the system. The key factors, again, both of 190 and 491, is that if you do have a skilled partner, since the points of partners was getting added in the ROI, you were able to secure an invitation. If you do have a skilled partner, high points, higher income, everything was adding up, then you would have got an invitation. If you don't have a skilled partner, or you do have a partner but they're not skilled, they don't even have competent English, that's when you might see a problem as well in securing invitation from the state, either for a 190 or a 491. All right, Queensland state nomination. Again, one of the biggest states which nominate applicants, and the number of seats they get is comparatively higher as well compared to the smaller states. So the features and eligibility of their program is for so they've divided again between the graduates and the ones who are working, or the skilled applicants who are working there. For the graduates, you have to have point score. Now, again, this state is basically asking for applicants to have a higher point score when they're applying for state nomination. So if you're looking at applying 119 Queensland, you must have got points which is 80 or above to get yourself considered for the for them to send you an invite. And if it's for a 491, 65 or higher is okay, which is the minimum point score anyways. You need to provide evidence of employment with a Queensland employer registered in Australia in your nominated occupation or a closely-related occupation. Now, that's for anyone who is studying in Queensland, bachelor's, master's, the graduates are required to demonstrate that they have a proof of employment with Queensland, except the ones who have completed a PhD or a doctorate qualification there. Again, English requirement being also one of the things which they're looking at. So they're asking applicants to apply with proficient English. So if you're looking at applying for the nomination from Queensland, you're required to meet the English proficiency, which has to, again, proficient, which is equivalent to 7 each. And again, the additional criteria for qualifications level detail. So PhD doctor graduates, again, applicants must be living onshore in Queensland, completed 100% of study there, decision on thesis and graduated in the last 2 years. That's when you are able to get yourself. So if you have crossed 2 years of period, but you have started that qualification, you may still not be eligible to apply. So they do not have any occupation list to nominate from, but they were picking anyone and everyone off the skill migration list. If you would secure a skill assessment and you finish your studies of any level, which is PhD or doctorate from the Queensland state, and you don't need a job as mentioned. But again, as a master's graduate, to apply for 190, you are required to have again completing your study in Queensland itself, graduated within the last 2 years when you're applying, have a master's degree in a skills assessment in a STEM field. Again, STEM basically is, science, teaching, engineering, mathematics, which are again the key, sectors which are of importance to Australia. So obviously, technology would be the ones which would be covering most of the IT occupations or professionals. So that's again, if you complete it from there, you're able to apply based on this pathway as well. Again, if you're looking at 491 option through masters, you need to complete your qualification. You must be employed full-time as well in Queensland in nominated or closely occupation while you're putting an application. So again, if you're looking at applying based on masters, and you have to consider yourself applying with the minimum points, because as I said in the beginning, they look at higher points applicants only when you would apply for 190 compared to 491, wherein you can apply with 65 and above. So you must be working for 35 hours per week in your nominated or closely occupation to apply. For bachelor's graduate, again, the same thing. They are looking at applicants to finish up studies there. They have to have a grade point of 5.5 GPA or above, and employed there for 35 hours per week in regional Queensland in the nominal or closed grade occupation, if they're looking at 491 as an option after completing their bachelor's qualification. Again, skilled workers do have an option to apply in Queensland. 80 points or higher for a 190, except for the trade occupations, which require 75 or higher, and 65 or higher for the 491. That's how they are looking at, inviting applicants when looking at the point score for these applications or the applicants. They're looking at proficient English as well, again, for the skilled workers, except for trade, which requires competent English. So if you're applying as a trade applicant there, you do not need to have 7 each, but you can apply with 6 each. But for anything else, you would need 7 each as the minimum score to be able to get invited. Ensure if you're applying for a 190 nomination, you are able to provide them with an evidence of full-time post-qualification employment for the past 6 months in your nominated occupation immediately prior to submitting. So they are only nominating skilled workers if you have been working for 6 months for a 190 in your nominated occupation post completion of your qualification for 35 hours per week. And if you're looking to apply for a 491, you must have been working for at least 35 hours per week for the past 3 months in your nominated occupation while you're submitting the expression of interest. Provide evidence of ongoing employment with a Queensland employer that is registered. So you are required to prove that you would have the employment for the further 12 months. So not that if you have just worked for 3 months or 6 months, that would fulfill the requirement. You must demonstrate that you would have this job available with you for the next 12 months by means of a job offer, which you will have to attach with your nomination. And again, commit to live there in the state. One of the key or the important parameters for any state to nominate you, that you would be committing yourself for 2 years for a 190 and 3 years at least for a 491 visa. Offshore applicants are also eligible to apply for, state nomination with Queensland for with the same points, high points requirement, occupation on the offshore Queensland skill list, proficient English or higher, a minimum of 3 years of post-study work experience, unless if it's specified against your IT occupations. But yeah, you're required to prove that you have to have 3 years of experience. If you're applying from offshore, then this is another important thing or the key thing which you keep in mind. Other than the requirements any onshore applicant has to meet, you are only required to prove and demonstrate that you've got 3 years of experience to be able to apply. New South Wales state nomination, again, one of the biggest states in Australia, and the one which absorbs majority of the IT applicants after Victoria, I should say, or I would say before Victoria, because New South Wales being the hub for information technology, a lot of applicants prefer to live in New South Wales or get selected from that state to get for their state nomination. Now, for 190 in New South Wales, you must meet the criteria, which is as per the Home Affairs, which is a skill assessment and the minimum points. In order to be able to get selected from them, they have removed most of the requirements, except that you have to have an occupation which is on the New South Wales skills list. You are currently living in New South Wales or offshore, and you must have been doing for the past 6 months. So if you are in any other state, again, New South Wales is not a state which is going to nominate you, and you have submitted your expression of interest wherein you have not selected any other state, but you have only selected New South Wales while submitting the EOI. That's how they nominate. Moving on. So 491 subclass for New South Wales skilled worker regional visa. NSW nomination for this. So there are basically two pathways for the 491 in New South Wales. One is the pathway wherein you can apply directly to the Regional Development Authority, which is RDA, popularly known as, or you're invited to apply by the Investment New South Wales. So when you make an application, so the first thing is submitting an expression of interest. When you apply to the RDA, you put a separate application to them and get nominated. Or with the pathway 2, you basically get the invitation directly from the state to submit your nomination and subsequently the visa. That's how they do it. So there are two pathways in the stream A, in fact, which is in the pathway 1, wherein you have established your work history with a New South Wales employer, and stream B when your skills are in higher demand. So while you're putting an application to RDA, they've got two different streams against which they would nominate you, and which are established work history. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so pretty much I'll just cover up that bit. So established pathways for the ones who are basically able to show that they have worked in their skilled occupation over the last 12 months with the same employer in their nominated occupation, and they are able to work for one employer itself. That's when they can apply. And for the other ones who believe they have got their skills which are in higher demand, they get nominated by the RDA straight away. So that's the only differentiating factor between the two, stream A and stream B. All right, so that's all for the slides today for the information technology applicants. So we have got a few questions which you can take.
All good. So we've got a few questions. One of our guests is asking, what is the current cutoff points for ICT business analyst?
Sure. Is there a state mentioned there, or
it's just, I think, in general. What is the?
Okay, well, starting with 189, the invitation, Victoria.
Yeah.
Thanks, Indiran, for clarifying. Now, Victoria has invited applicants even at 70 points or above from the ICT business analyst background. Again, because the way, as I said, Victoria state nomination program works very differently to other states. If you are looking at state nomination in Victoria, as of date or until 30th of June, the program works like you have to have a job which could be in skill level 1, 2, or 3, or even if you're not working, you can apply. So with points, the way it should be is that if you don't have a job, you should really be looking at higher points itself. But if you do have a skill job, your job or the income levels also would make a difference. So if I am applying in Victoria with 70, 75 points, at the same time, I have got a job which is paying me 100,000, 120,000, they will be inviting applicants based on that. Again, if you do have a family member, let's say you have a wife who is also a skilled partner, they're giving you 10 points in your expression of interest. Even at lesser points, you are able to secure an invitation, and even at lesser income. So they work on certain parameters combined together, which is your point score, your income levels of working in skill level, having a skilled partner or not. So if you're meeting any 2 or 3, if 3 the best, any 2 of 3, then the second best, and just 1, that's the third best. So that's how basically they are inviting applicants.
Great. Sadman Saqib is asking, what is the current cutoff points for ICT business analyst for South Australia?
South Australia, again, does not work on the... So while we cover up the state nomination, let me just clarify one thing. Most of the states here, except the ones which I've mentioned, like Queensland, New South Wales, these are the states which have mentioned that the minimum points they would invite or nominate applicants with. So if you are talking about South Australia has a pathway by means of you being a graduate from there. And second pathway that you are a skilled applicant in the state. As a skilled applicant, if you're getting to apply there, they may even invite you at 65, 70 points if you're meeting the requirements of working there for 12 to 24 months, right? So that's where the difference is. And again, if somebody who's working in the regional for the past 6 months in South Australia, working in any skill, they are able to get even a 491 with a minimum score of 65 points. So it's with state that it's primarily not based on points, but also what you are demonstrating in the state or you're meeting the state criteria or not. That's all.
Thank you for that. John Boshra is asking, he's got Bachelor's of Communications and Electronics, but he works for IT field for 10 years. He considers himself as a minor or major ICT.
So look, there is a way to assess that. So if your qualification, let's say, is for 4 years, and out of those 4 years, the number of subjects or the semesters you have studied in 4 years, let's say, were 8. In the 8 semesters, you have studied 6 subjects every semester, which is a 48 subjects. The minimum requirement to consider it major should be that you're 25% and above of content of those subjects, so which is out of 48, let's say 12 subjects have to be at least ICT. So that has to be highly relevant to ICT in content. Out of that, 67% has to be in your nominated occupation. So let's say if I'm applying for a software engineer and the number of subjects I have studied across my study, 12 were there ICT and 8 were there which were majors in software, I can consider my qualification as major. If this number is not meeting, as I said, in terms of the percentages, then you are required to consider this as minor itself. Now, again, you being with 10 years of experience would fulfill the pathway. So you don't really have to decide and apply the assessment with your own, gut feeling or with your own understanding. But the assessment authority would itself assess it and come back to you. But yes, to get an idea, this is how the percentages are being calculated when they are doing it for any ACES application.
Thank you. I believe that answers the question. Raj is asking, do we need job in IT for 190 visa or just professional year program?
Is there a state that's been mentioned there?
No.
So that'll be different again. I believe professionally is not something which can lead to a state nomination anywhere. Professionally, there's a program. Okay, thanks, Raj, for clarifying. It's Queensland. Now, for state nomination in Queensland, with the pathway, they have got a requirement that you have to have for 190 at least 80 points and 65 at least for a 491, and you must be working there for 6 months in your nominated occupation before the state would nominate you. So yes, you need to have a job for 6 months, which should be highly relevant to your field or the one you have a skill assessment in. And that job offer should also be valid for the 12 months. So when you're applying, you need to show an employment of 6 months with a job that would continue for the further 12 months as well before the state would nominate you.
Thank you. Fanny is asking, is it required to live and work on or only to stay after getting 491 in Victoria?
491 basically is very, a visa which should be understood very clearly. The requirement or the conditions that are associated with 491 does not restrict you to stay in a certain state. The condition says that you have to be living in a specific regional area. Now, the specific regional area could be South Australia, because the state entirely is regional. Could be Northern Territory, could be Canberra, could be Tasmania. So you are not bound by the conditions to be only in the state which has nominated you. But if you look at, the time when you make a nomination application, you intend or you show your intention of settling down in that state. So let's say if I get nominated from Victoria and straight after getting nomination, I say, no, I want to move to New South Wales. it would look like as if that was only to, that was only a means by which you wanted to get yourself nominated, but you have not uh, had an intention of settling here. So that's where it's a recommendation that after you get nominated from any state for 190 either or a 491, you should really look at spending 2 to 3 years the least. So when we say like 2 years for a 190, 3 years for the 491. But as far as the visa conditions are concerned, you may have to refer to the conditions itself, whether that requires you to be living. So 491 does not restrict, there is no foundation for you to be living in Victoria, but you need to ensure that you are living in the specified regional area, which can be anywhere outside of Victoria as well.
Thank you. Ram is asking, for software engineer, what's the chances of getting 189 and 190 in Victoria with 75 points?
Well, look, the basis of getting invitation would rather be if at 75 points in January, when there was an invitation round, we have got clients who got picked up at 70 plus 5 points. The basis was that they had skill partners. So I have had clients who got picked up at this score again already. And their income levels were not absolutely the great. They got picked up at the income levels which were around 65, 70,000 as well in the salary. So yes, if the basis of the nomination for Victoria continues to be the same in the coming year, if you're at 75 points, probably as a single applicant, I know you, this is how they have been disadvantaging the applicants who are applying individually to the ones who are applying with skilled partner, that they have put them ahead of them, which I believe, which I also recommend that should change in the coming year, because as such, it's not, that you one would obviously look at a skilled partner because of getting invitation. If you're in the same point score, you should really get invited. But yes, the state is just not focusing on points itself, but inviting applicants with lesser points as far as they can demonstrate they're working at skill level 1, 2, or 3. So if that continues, you may still have a chance of getting invitation.
Thank you. Dimple is asking, any chances to get invitation from Western Australia General Stream Schedule 2 491 with 75 points in the new financial year, where she is still living in Western Australia. She's asking this occupation for ICT project manager and ICT business analyst.
WA has been, again, I would say very, the state has been always looking towards nominating as many people as they would want to, because they have always asked for more seats. With your occupation, I believe the score is not as much. I believe the point score is something which you should work towards increasing, because the competition for 491 would rather be more when it comes to ICT occupations. So definitely, that's my advice, that it's always good as an ICT applicant you're applying with a higher score. Yes, the graduates from there have got invitations at lesser scores itself. In fact, 65, 70 as well. But primarily 491, what you're looking at is in the general stream. If you're anything which is 18 above, you may have a better chance. So that's where, if you're just having anything which is undone, I would recommend you to consider that. But yes, these occupations are obviously, these can get picked up in WA, because while they have been lately only inviting the applicants which are within the state, that may still give you an opportunity over the other applicants who are applying from outside the state.
Thank you. Ram is asking, study is offshore in electronics and comms engineering, but working as software engineer for 8 years offshore and 1 year onshore in Victoria. How much experience will be considered from that 8 years, as the study is not relevant to the job?
You do have a skill assessment. Again, the way it should be is, if your study is absolutely not relevant, or if it's completely off, then ICT. So when I say ICT, not even major, not even minor, I believe you should really not look at anything to get counted from your offshore skill points, because if the assessment authority has deducted 6 years of experience, then in that case, it would be very hard for you to obviously demonstrate that you have got experience beyond that, because it will be left with only 2 years. Now, the other reference point for a lot of applications while they see how much points do they consider for the offshore experience or the onshore experience, refer to the 𝐴NSCO. So 𝐴NSCO primarily, if for your occupation says that you can have 5 years of experience to substantiate your qualification, leave aside 5 years, and for the rest 3 years you can claim points. But that is where you have to refer to the 𝐴NSCO for your specific skills, and that will give you an answer. So between the 𝐴NSCO and the skill assessment outcome, the way it would be assessed is the case officer would have an opinion which is more beneficial to your case. So if it's 5 years giving you points, not 6 years, then they'll consider as 5 years. But again, that is very subjective. So, I would recommend you to get in touch with one of our officers to get an understanding of your skill assessment, and subsequently looking at, whether it is again ICT minor, major, or it is it's a qualification which is completely different to the experience you've got.
Great. David has got a question. ICT support engineer cutoff points for offshore and region you would suggest to apply and attract 70 plus points.
So what state was that for?
So David is asking ICT support engineer cutoff points for offshore and region you would suggest to apply. So what would be the approximate points that they can apply from offshore and onshore if they are applying to ICT support engineer, the cutoff points?
Well, look, as a support engineer, you're only able to apply for state nomination. So you will first have to see which state nomination criteria you're meeting in. When it comes to cutoff, if you're looking at applying for Victoria, as I said, again, they are not really working only on the points as the basis to apply, but they are looking at a couple of things working together, which is salary, skill partner. Again, obviously, as an offshore applicant, you can't prove salary, but as much experience you would rather demonstrate, that would become the basis for you to put through the application. So Victoria can be a state for you to consider your application. But if you do have experience and you're meeting the requirements for any specific states, likely we have talked about Northern Territory as well, which nominate offshore applicants if you do show that you have got experience in your skill. Canberra also has an option if you are showing that you have got experience. They are also able to nominate applicants. So you have to apply for multiple states because as an offshore applicant, you are not going to get invitation only because you have or you won't get rejected because you've got lesser points. It is understandable that as an offshore applicant you may not have higher points, but if you have got experience in your skill, that would become the basis for you to get an invitation.
All good. Shivani is asking if we have job contract for 6 months in Tasmania or Western as ICT support engineer, what are the chances to get 190?
What occupation is that again?
For ICT support engineer.
And which state are they? Are they offshore or the applicant is onshore?
I guess they are onshore and they are inquiring for Tasmania or Western Australia.
Onshore, okay. So Shivani, thank you for your question. If you do have a job contract, again, so Tasmania do not just nominate for the job contract. You obviously have to be working there firstly for 6 months, whereas it's different for WA. They would obviously want you to just come there and work there, subsequently apply even when you have a job offer. So with 100 points, I would definitely say look for a state which is going to give you further career options as well. And compared to Tasmania, I would definitely pick up Western Australia as an option in this case because you've got higher points. With these many points, again, if you really are keen to consider an option, I am of the opinion to even consider Victoria or New South Wales because with these sort of points, you may even can get nominated from there. Again, if you can get your employer, if the business you are looking to have the offer from or job from is also available in bigger states, then better to pick up states which can also offer you a good career options after you get settled. So.
Thank you. David is asking, my partner is PhD holder in English and I have IT support experience for 8 years. Her uncle is ready to invite her from Townsville. Should we choose the path or try for 189 or 190 individually?
What skill assessment is it?
They haven't mentioned anything about the skill assessment, but then he mentions that his partner is a PhD holder here in English and he's got an IT support experience for over 8 years. Her
Okay.
uncle is ready to invite her from Townsville. So should we choose the path or try for 189 or 190?
The opinion 189 and 190 are definitely better than picking up 491 family sponsored if it's what you are pointing to. So there is no point of you know support engineering roles do not have an option of family sponsorship. If her skills as a PhD will get assessed further into any of the skills which is on the medium to long term, then only she is able to go and get a family nomination sponsorship as well. So family sponsorship is only entitled for occupations which are on the medium to long term skills list. You cannot really have them. You cannot really have them. A family sponsor cannot happen only for anything which is on the other list, which is short term or the regional occupation list. So I would believe you to consider 189, 190 options, provided you are coming up with those skills which are in greater demand. But as a support engineer with 8 years of experience, I believe you yourself can basically take a shot and then get yourself nominated. Because IT skills are always in great demand. You can talk about any state, they're willing to nominate. And with your partner who's a PhD grad from here, obviously she will have another 6 years in hand in terms of if she hasn't got her TR yet. She can definitely get you a work visa for that long, with which you can work out on pathways very easily.
Oh, good. Mohammed Hamza is asking, he's having full-time job since 7 months and is living in NSW under postgraduate visa. 2 MSA have been done, telecommunications network engineer and computer network engineer, with 75 points for NSW 190 and 70 for 189. Do we have any chance based on the data you have?
Well, look, hard to say with these points in IT. It is very, even in telecom, the points requirement for New South Wales have always been on the higher side. I have not seen New South Wales as a state to be nominating applicants at lesser points. That's what they have always stuck with. Irrespective of the program for this year is about to finish, I haven't seen any applicants except from the ones who were from trade background who got picked up at lesser points. So looking at again the future, the competition is going to go up. I think it is important for you to really look up on the points, because if the point system is not going anywhere, number of seats obviously have been decided for the coming year, which are going to be same as what has been this year. It is not going to change much because the competition is going to be as much again. So I would recommend strongly you to look at either other states as an option wherein you could fulfill the requirement. Probably wait for July mid around when you can have a better understanding of how should be your how you should really project the next year, or how should you really move around in the next year. Otherwise, I mean, at this point of time, the point increasing points is the only thing I can possibly advise.
Thank you. Jiffin is asking, in Queensland, which subclass 190491 is preferable for IT experience, as I have 10 years of experience as software engineer and my skill assessment is also completed.
What state was the question?
Queensland. In Queensland, which subclass 190 or 491 is preferable?
Well, 100%. Look, it's never been it's never, I would say anybody would be taking that as a by choice. Everybody wants 190 because that's straight permanent residency. 190 is not a straight permanent residency, but an option which is leading from provisional to a permanent visa 491. So you definitely look at, with your experience, if your point score is going 80 and above, that's where you're entitled to apply for 190. But if it's sticking to 65, 70, then pretty much the only choices you would have is the only choice you would have is 491. So it's based on points in Queensland. So that's how you should really be looking at it.
Thank you. I think the last question that we'll take for today will be from Spain. He's asking for 491 visa. Is income cap has been removed? Is that news is accurate?
So far, yes, that's what has been published by the department on their website. So obviously, if it's anything on the official page, then it is a yes. We're yet to see anything on that on the policy or the legislation wherein we could give you exactly yes on that. But again, if it's on the website, that's in conjunction with the prior announcement which was made for the TSMIT to increase from 53,900 to 70,000. A lot of people were getting confused. That is going to be applicable to for the 491 as well. A lot of questions have been coming around to us every day whether this is going to work out for whether this is going to change for 491. And I think this was an answer to everyone who was planning to apply for a 491 that yeah, they have clearly removed any income threshold to be a part of 191 while the requirement of having notice of assessment stays there. So you have to still show 3 years of notice of assessment, other document requirements for residency and employment stays as is, but there is no minimum in what you have to demonstrate if you're looking to apply for a 191 from a 491 now. Guys, you can reach out to us as well on our email addresses, which I believe was on the presentation. It's kunal.verma at aussizgroup.com, or possibly reach out to any of the offices you are close to, in whichever state you are. Just Google Aussizz Group close to your vicinity, and then reach out to any of our branches, and that's where you can get an answer to any of your questions. And wishing a great and a promising migration year ahead for everyone. And thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thank you for joining us today.